kind of going off script here a little bit, you had
Yeah.
mentioned that there are some purple parties that are occurring. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is such a kick. I had no idea. I had nothing to do with this, but I guess there was a fair amount of anticipation for this book, which is wonderful. And then of course these groups already exist, right? There are plenty of clubs in this country and around the world who gather anyway to, jam on songs. And I'm so eternally grateful that our first two daily ukulele songbooks have become a part of that repertoire for these clubs. And so the news that we had a third collection of songs is has gotten out, and people were so anticipating this new collection that they came up with this idea of having purple parties.
Hello and welcome everyone to another video from John's Ukulele Cafe. Today we'll be visited again by the amazingly awesome Jim Beloff. You can catch our first interview in the link above my head if you would like to watch that video interview from over 3.5 years ago. You can do that. If you like these videos, hit like and subscribe to my channel where you can catch many more ukulele videos, especially daily ukulele content. So with me today again is Jim Beloff. He is the author of The Ukulele, A Visual History by Backbeat Books, Uktopia, Adventures in the Ukulele World, and is also the author, arranger, and publisher of the Jumpin' Jim series of ukulele songbooks with over 1 million copies in print, including the Daily Ukulele, the Daily Ukulele Leap Year edition, and most recently the Another Year edition of this book, which has a purple cover. The former two are some of the biggest and best-selling ukulele songbooks ever published, and the latter will definitely help raise that statistic in the future. So, welcome back, Jim. Thank you so much for meeting me today.
Oh, hey, John, it's a pleasure.
Yeah. So, we met online on Zoom a little over 3 years ago when I interviewed you for the first time. I'm really amazed at how much has happened in that time. And I've really enjoyed the rabbit hole that's had me learning all these songs from the Daily Ukulele books. Um, and I am planning on going into the Blue Book in the future. I think I have about 70 songs left. Um, but yeah, so I just had a question about how the Purple Book came about. So when we had spoken originally, I don't think maybe the Purple Book was on the radar at that moment. But could you give me a little bit of background on how the Another Year Daily Ukulele book came about?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. Yeah, about 2.5 years ago, I went. This was sort of in COVID recovery time, so there's always been a very well attended, high profile music trade show for music stores called NAMM, and it always happens around January of every year. But after COVID, it was canceled a couple of times, and then finally they started to convene again, and this time it was in April of 2022. And and I remember going out and just wanting to say hi to our distributor. All of our songbooks are distributed by a company called Hal Leonard, and so we had a nice meeting, and I thought we would just sort of catch up on a few things. And then during the meeting, my main contact at Hal Leonard said, would you ever consider doing a third volume of the Daily Ukulele series? And my first thought was, I just couldn't imagine coming up with another 365 songs. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, especially if you want to maintain sort of the quality, you want to maintain a certain mix of songs that are pretty well known and, appropriate for strummers. And so I said, well, let me think about it. And, after that, came home and put together a rather paltry list of, maybe I got up to about 70 or 80 songs that weren't in the first two books. Of course, this third volume, if it was going to be, had to be completely unduplicated. So yet another 365 songs. So I had this thought, what if I were to post this on our Facebook page and see if maybe people there could come up with some songs too. So I went to the crowd or I what do we call it? Crowdsourcing. And so I said, well, guys, this is your chance. And if it comes off and I use some, you know, and I, I use these suggestions, I will give credit to anybody who gives me any song suggestions. And within a month, I had over 400 songs. And it wasn't just that I had 400 songs, but as I started to check every single song that was suggested, I realized how many of them were really right on. And a number of them were songs I mean, a lot of them I knew, but there were plenty that I just didn't know, especially ones from the last 20 or so years that, where I haven't followed the pop scene quite so closely. And then there were also sort of obscure gems, often like country and western songs that just are really fun that I just didn't know. And so by the time I'd gone through all these 400 songs, I had amazingly assembled more songs than I needed. And thus began, then the whole other process of both clearing the songs, because there's an enormous amount of work that goes into licensing the tunes. Fortunately, because the Daily Ukulele series is a joint venture between Flea Market Music, our company, and Hal Leonard, they take care of all the licensing because otherwise it would take decades. So they started working on that, and then I started working on the arranging, and so that's how it started.
Hmm, that's great. Yeah, and I've really enjoyed looking through the list of the songs. And I think that's my favorite part about the Daily Ukulele books is most of the time they're probably about half the time they're songs I've never heard of, and then I get to go and learn those. And that's the real treat and discovering all of that. And definitely the crowdsourcing aspect of that really helps, draw out those gems for sure. So,
Yeah.
well, I have a digital copy of the book at the moment, and I'm really enjoying the songs, as I said, that made it in. And in my opinion, I feel like in each book, it progresses slightly in difficulty. The New Purple Book includes songs like Girl from Ipanema and songs with some optional harmonies offered. And I've seen that a little bit in the Blue Book and just a little bit in the Yellow Book. Um, was the increased complexity of the material in the New Purple Book, do you feel like I don't know if it was a conscious choice for you or did you feel like it naturally progressed that way?
Yeah, I think it naturally progressed. I don't and I remember people saying in the Blue Book that it had gotten harder, and that wasn't a conscious decision, and it's not a conscious decision now. It's all driven by the songs. It's like I love that song. I think it's nice on a uke. I think people would like to play it on a uke. I am aware, yes, there are songs like, I'm thinking of Don't Sleep in the Subway, which was a big hit for Petula Clark in the 60s. That changes keys. There are a lot of chords there. Yes, so everybody knows that there are some songs in the Daily Ukulele books where there are, 10, 15, possibly 20 chord changes. I'm very aware of that, and always I'm looking to take out chords that are unnecessary.
Mhm.
And so I make you this pledge that at least I have filtered these songs to the degree to which if there was a chord that was unnecessary that didn't add something to the song, then I took it out. But if it's in there, then at least to my ears, that chord was essential to the basic DNA of the song.
Mhm.
It's like, if you took out that chord, it wouldn't quite be the song that we love. And it just so happens that the songs that were crowdsourced and then the ones that I especially liked, many of them were, that were sophisticated,
Mhm.
were with beautiful, beautiful chord changes. You also have to remember that I lean on not just because I'm experienced, but as a song lover.
Mhm.
And as a pop song lover, I think I've written about this that I'm very deeply moved by chord changes, and I think sometimes of the ukulele as this little chord machine,
Mhm.
and so it is in fact the changes from one chord to another chord, and sometimes they can be especially emotional and pretty and unexpected. So those are things that I actually lean into because that's what makes these songs so beautiful. And I get a special charge at how well this relatively simplistic instrument with just four strings can translate songs that are very harmonically rich.
Mhm.
There are a couple of Henry Mancini songs in the book, like Charade and Two for the Road, that are just heartbreakingly gorgeous.
Mhm.
And it just knocks me out that on the same instrument that we sing You Are My Sunshine, we can also somehow translate these songs that were, I'm sure, composed by somebody at a piano with 10 fingers, finding all of these very finessey chords and somehow still bring it to life.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm looking forward to checking out those songs by Henry Mancini. So with my own students, at least on drum set, I always, when I explain what jazz is, I always go to the Pink Panther always and,
Right.
bang, spang, a lang, and they get it right away and they love it. And so checking out those Henry Mancini songs would be really wonderful. So and as you said, a lot of these songs in the new Purple Book are more updated or more recent, and I do really appreciate a lot of those. So, but there are some good additions from the Beatles, the Beach Boys. I think I saw a Grateful Dead song in there,
Oh yeah, a
and
couple.
and so
and
yeah,
and way more in the future. I mean, like there's a song called "The Way" that I had never heard of. That's from a Closing Time by Semisonic. I mean, these are songs from the last 10, 15 years. So I wasn't really familiar with them, but uh, even "Drop Baby Drop," which has become sort of an unofficial closing song at Uke Fest. It's like everybody comes up after they've done the concert and we all sing "Drop Baby Drop." That's like in the last 10 years or so.
yeah.
Um, so yeah.
I'll have to check that out as well. I wasn't familiar with that song until I saw it listed in the book, but kind of going off script here a little bit, you had
Yeah.
mentioned that there are some purple parties that are occurring. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is such a kick. I had no idea. I had nothing to do with this, but I guess there was a fair amount of anticipation for this book, which is wonderful. And of course these groups already exist, right? There are plenty of clubs in this country and around the world who gather anyway to, jam on songs. And I'm so eternally grateful that our first two daily ukulele songbooks have become a part of that repertoire for these clubs. And so the news that we had a third collection of songs has gotten out, and people were so anticipating this new collection that that they came up with this idea of having purple parties. And I talk about this in the foreword to the book. I said, when my wife Liz and I came up with the title, I mean, we thought we'd really struck gold. We thought, daily ukulele, it rhymes, it's perfect. What a perfect name for a songbook with 365 songs. Lo and behold, years later, we learned, the Daily Ukulele is not called the Daily Ukulele; it's the Yellow Book, and the follow up to it, the Leap Year, which we also thought wasn't a terrible title, with 366 songs released during a leap year. Um, Forget it; it's the Blue Book. And so I write in the foreword to this new volume. I said, well, I'm calling it the Daily Ukulele another year, but I know very well that it will be known as the Purple Book. And
Yeah.
so it is known as the Purple Book. And thus, a lot of people who are anticipating it are looking forward to having these celebrations, these gathered in person, mostly celebrations of getting the book and going through it. And they're calling them purple parties.
That's awesome. I love that celebration aspect of a new book coming out, and yeah, I'm looking forward to having a purple party with our own group that meets on Tuesdays, and we call ourselves the Tukers. So the Tuesday Ukers, right?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So a few of your songs also made it into the Purple Book. And did you find it difficult to choose songs from your catalog of songs, or were they fan requests?
Yeah, well, I will say that when I went to the crowd, so to speak, to say I really need some suggestions, I was really pleasantly surprised at how many people said, "Don't forget to put in some of your own," and so I took that as encouragement to do it. I didn't want to put too many in, but I put, I think, I don't know, 8 of the 365 are either written by me or co-written by me with, folks like Lyle Ritz
Mhm.
or um, um, Herb Oda, of course, and so I did choose songs that I are more often mainstays in my live sets when I perform at uke fests. So it was songs that people may associate with me if they've seen me perform.
Great. Yeah, I really love Charles Ives. It's a really fun one. I remember
Yeah, thank you.
kind of first learning about Charles Ives when I was in undergrad, and you tell a really nice story of um, his life and led two lives, right? Like a musical life and a professional life as well. So,
Yeah, well, he became a real mentor, sort of an inspiration to me when I started out, and I wanted to, both work on this little entrepreneurial venture that I had, this uke thing, but at the same time, you got to pay the bills. And
mhm.
so he became kind of this North Star for me, where, well, here's somebody who managed to do both and do them well. And I'm not sure if you know this, but for any songwriter to get covers is a big deal. And I was thrilled a couple of years ago when Noel Stuckey, the Paul of Peter, Paul and Mary, he did a recording of Charles Ives on his last album, and that meant so much to me. So it was a
Mm,
big deal.
that's great. That's great. So we have a few fan questions
Yep.
from the Facebook group, and this is the Daily Ukulele Facebook group on Facebook. And if you guys want to find that, if you guys haven't seen that before, go ahead and check that out. But Deidre would love to know how you decide what key to put a song in. Do you try to stick close to the original key, or do you go for what might be easiest to play?
Right. So that is maybe the most important constraint after selecting the song. So once you've said, okay, I think this song would work on a uke, then the question becomes, of course, what key? And so there's an overlay of considerations. The first, I suppose, is that yes, it's relatively easy to play on a uke. We all know that there are certain keys that are not so great on a ukulele, like E, which happens to be a great key on the guitar. So oftentimes you have to change, if you've got songs that are in E. So anyway, those keys, as everyone knows, are like C, F, G, sometimes D, sometimes A. The second consideration is that I'm arranging these books for a wide variety of singers. So you've got everything from sopranos to basses, and you've got older folks and kids,
Mhm.
and so uh, over the years, I sort of stumbled into a way of thinking about what keys, beyond playing, what keys are comfortable for the majority of people to sing in. And it ended up that just through trial and error, it seemed like if I kept most of the melody between middle C and the octave above, with some notes going above and below, it felt like that worked best. And then this time, as I was preparing this book, I was looking for some confirmation of that, and I did a search about ideal keys for a mixed group of singers. And lo and behold, I really hit the jackpot. I came across a couple of sites for arrangers of church music. And I stumbled on actually a motto or a saying, which is "C to shining C." And it was exactly what I had stumbled on, which is that when you're writing music for, let's say, a congregation in a church, and you want the most people in the congregation to be able to sing along in some comfort, if you keep the meat of the hymn, let's say, in between those two C's and not go too high or too low below those two C's, you will be able to accommodate the most singers.
Mhm.
And so I took that. I really, really was so grateful to find that. So to answer the question, it's a combination of finding a good uke key to play in, finding a good key for the most people, men, women, children, to sing in. And then there was a third consideration, and that was what key the song was done by the best known recording artist who sang it. So, and in that case, especially for women's songs, right? Stevie Nicks, let's say there are a couple of Stevie Nicks hits. I erred on the side of keeping it either in her key or very close to her key. So because I knew that women in particular would especially want to be able to sing a song like that. And I probably erred in the same way for songs that were very identified with men vocals. So if it felt right and it still satisfied the other two criteria, then I kept pretty close to it. And then in general, I tried to keep pretty close to the best known recordings.
Great. Thank you so much for answering that question. And she actually had a follow-up,
Yep.
which I think is another good question. But did you try to put a mixture of songs in the book that had a low amount of chords and then also ones that have a fair amount of chords? So 2 to 3 chords for intermediate, and then obviously the more advanced ones having more chords? Or was it more of a luck of the draw to reach that type of balance?
Yeah, I will say that whenever I found a great song that had like 4 chords, I was thrilled because I know that that's a part of our user base that I absolutely want to support and encourage. So I'd like to think that I struck a balance, but you're not going to put in songs with 4 chords just because they have 4 chords and have a song that nobody knows or doesn't want to sing. So like so many other things, it's an enormous balancing act of, is the song well known? Is it, and then, are those the right chords for it, and all of those sorts of things. So it is a balancing act. Yes, I am hyper aware of not having too many songs with a lot of chords. One thing that I will explain is that because an additional criteria in all of these daily ukulele books was that we never wanted a song to go beyond a spread. So we never wanted anyone to have to turn a page. So what that often means is that you end up with songs that might be a page and a third, page and a half, page and a quarter. And so then what do? You have a leftover piece, and I wanted to be able to use those. And so oftentimes I would then hunt for short songs. And the only place you're really going to find short songs is in public domain collections, sort of folk songs, sea shanties, things like this that could fit in that sort of little leftover piece. By and large, I would say 90% of all of those smaller songs that you'll find going through the book have fewer chords. One other thing before I forget, there's a big change that I made in this book after the first two. And so this really came about from user critique, and that was that people really told me how much they don't like having the additional verses at the end of the song. And so I made a commitment in this new book that there are no additional verses at the end of songs. They are all folded in under the melody. So as a result, you will see plenty of songs like an old, PD song like Barbara Allen, I think has 10 verses and they are all under the melody.
Well, that's great. I know a lot of people will appreciate that. And even within my little uke group that meets up too, they'll go, "Yay!" And maybe that'll give it another incentive to get the purple book as well. So, all right. And so the company Magic Fluke, it came out with a baritone ukulele. I believe it was this past year. I know that you're a fan of the baritone ukulele. Is that something that you helped work on and develop? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, for those who aren't familiar with it, the Magic Fluke Company is run by my brother-in-law, Dale Webb, who invented the Fluke ukulele and designed it, and my sister, Phyllis Webb. And, I think they're celebrating, believe it or not, their 25th year um, manufacturing these unusual and great ukes, and they also make, I should say, a travel fiddle called the cricket, and even a short scale bass and banjo too. But in any case, from the very beginning, once they started to make the fluke, of course, everybody said, well, what other sizes can you do? Can you do a tenor? Can you do a soprano? And so inevitably, people for years have been asking, can you do a baritone? And one of the problems is because the fluke is what it is. It's molded. It's a molded back shell, and molded to create a molded part is enormously expensive up front. And so you have to weigh these decisions based on how much demand there is. And so I think there was a concern as to whether there was enough demand to make that investment feasible. But at some point, I think my nephew Josh Webb, Dale and Phyllis's son, I think decided that maybe he would try and work around the existing shell and see if he could come up with a pretty decent sounding uh, uke that could be tuned like a baritone. And so he worked on this for quite a while, and eventually came in with their baritone Fluke, which actually, by the way, is in the it's reviewed in the brand new issue of Ukulele Magazine.
Mm.
And so if you look on YouTube, you'll find me demonstrating a very early prototype of it, and it's very nice. It's not, because the shell is the same size as the concert and tenor flukes. Um, it's not as big a body as a traditional S-shaped baritone uke. And so I think that everyone's pretty comfortable thinking it's more of a travel size baritone.
Okay.
So it's not much bigger than your regular fluke ukulele, but you can tune it baritone and it's got a lovely tone. It's not the loudest of the baritone ukes, but it's a good one to travel with. So your mileage may vary, as they say.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing about that. And I was familiar that you had a website, the Flea Market Music website, but
Yeah.
I hadn't really surfed on there very much until actually this past month. And I love all the content that you have on there. For those that haven't visited the site, there's a ukulele player directory. There are ukulele groups listed by state and country. A ukulele marketplace where you can look for, I believe, gently used ukuleles.
Yes.
There's a bulletin board with just general things going on in the ukulele world, and a jukebox that features many pieces and songs from flea market music. So if y'all get some time to check that out, you should definitely go over to Flea Market Music. And obviously, they have a store on there where you can order the Purple Book as well as all the other wonderful products that Jim's got on there. So
Yeah. Thank you.
well, yeah. Do you have anything you want to close us out with, Jim, before we
No, I did.
part?
I did put in your request, John,
Okay.
which was never going to give you up.
Yeah, thank you so much for putting that in there. I'm looking forward to
um,
doing that song with the group.
you may have given me some other suggestions. So if so, thank you for all of them. But I remember you specifically requesting that song, so I got that in. Another song that I don't know if people know this, but it's just on my mind at the moment, is that great New Radical song, "You Get What You Give,"
Hmm.
and that's a song that was really fun to arrange because the chords in that song are very non-traditional. And at first you'd think, how am I gonna replicate that sound?
Hmm.
Um, and I found them. I'm really, really happy to say I found those chords. They are unusual, but if you're a fan of that song, try it out. It's not CF and G7 for sure, but it works. And so, those are little moments as you're going through a book where you think, oh yeah, that works.
So that, and to be honest with you, that's the reason that I love the Daily Ukulele books is because I feel like you have such an ear for hearing the songs and how the chords go that you've selected with those songs because you could look up, any song on a website, a I'm not going to mention the website, but a lot of the time the chords aren't correct when you look them up
Right.
online, and then when you pull open the daily ukulele books, sometimes it's like the essence of the song, or it's voiced in such a way that it brings out the melody. And so if you all are on the fence about the daily ukulele books, you just need to check them out first, and then you'll fall in love with them, and you'll probably want to buy them all, like I have. So,
Well, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for all you do in terms of making them accessible with your videos, which are a huge part of it, so that people, who aren't familiar, especially with the songs that they don't know, they can see you playing it, and that's a big help.
well, thank you. Yeah, we've got about 70 left. I probably have 10 that have been recorded that I just have to make videos for. So, I'm hoping within the year, for sure, that I'll get those done and get to start in on another daily ukulele book. So, well, thank you again so much, Jim, for meeting me today and taking time out of your busy schedule. And thank you, everyone, for watching this video. Again, if you like these videos, hit like and subscribe to the channel. Um, and yeah, I hope to meet you sometime in person. I know we've only met online before, but I'm going to give you a little blurb here about Jim here at the end. So, Jim owns Flea Market Music and is dedicated to the ukulele. And he plays Fluke, Flea, and Firefly ukuleles. He's toured Japan, Australia, Canada, and the company's motto is "Uke can change the world." And again, you can find all of his great products at fleamarketmusic.com. And you can get more information about current events at facebook.com/Jim Beloff Music. Again, check out Jim's YouTube channel at Flea Market Music Incorporated as well. So thanks again, and until next time, until we meet again.
You got it.
Okay, bye bye.
Thanks, John.